Good morning. Today was Daf Nun Tes 59. We're at the very top of 59a at the Mishnah. Yesh te'unas shemen u'levana. There are some menachos, flour offerings that require oil and levana, which is translated as frankincense. Shemen v'lo levana. Some use oil but not levana. Levana v'lo shemen. Some use levana and not oil. Lo levana v'lo shemen, and some come without either. Which ones need both? Minchas hasolas, the flour, a fine flour offering. Hamachwas, the pan. Marcheshes is a different kind of pan, the deeper pan. Hachalos, that's the excuse me, that's hachalos varikikin. That's the baked mincha, which can come either as a loaf or a wafer. Those come with both oil and frankincense. Minchas Kohanim, Minchas Kohen, Mashiach, Minchas Goy, the mincha of the priests or of the high priest or of a non-Jew, Minchas Nashim or women, Minchas HaOmer, and the Omer, which is brought on the first day of Pesach. Those all require both as well. Minchas Nesachim Tu'una Shemen ve'ein Tu'una Levana. The mincha of Nesachim that come with the libation that accompanies every korban, every korban tzibur, requires oil but not frankincense. Lechem apanim, the bread that was on the table, ton levana, that required frankincense. Ve'ein ton shemen, but no oil. And which ones need neither? Shtei alechem, we've discussed at length. That's the korban on Shavuos. Uminchas chote, that's a mincha comes for a sinner. Uminchas knos and the sota, and tuning lo shemen v'lo levana. They take neither. Amar of Papa. Kol hecha ditznan, eser tznan. Wherever we have the requirement of a mincha, you have to bring 10 of the same kind of thing. Rabbi Shimon diamar, which is different than Rabbi Shimon, who says mechsa chalos mechsa rakikin yavin. He says you can split it. Yeah, you have to bring 10, but they can be of different types. So Rav Papa says they all have to be the same types, uniform offering. And Rabbi Shimon says, yeah, you have to bring 10. That's the standard offering, but it can be split among different types. So Kamash Malon Dolo. So Rav Papa is saying against Rabbi Shimon, basically. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, v'nasata le'ah shemen v'lo alechem apanim shemen. You put on it. The Torah says put on it oil. So what's on it? It excludes something. It's excluding the lechem apanim, which is not actually brought in the mizbeach. Of course, but it's on the shulchan. Sheyachal, because I would have thought v'lo dinhu, make a kavah chomer. I would have thought a minchas nesachim that doesn't even need levana, so it's not so great, right? Not so important, but it requires oil. Lechem apanim shetan levana, the lechem apanim which needs frankincense. Ein adin shetan shemen, so certainly you should need. It seems to be more important because it requires or holier or has a greater status because it comes with levana, and it didn't certainly you should need oil. Tam lamar allow, so that's why you have a pasuk that says no, only on it, but excluding something, excluding the lechem apanim. Allow shemen v'lo lechem apanim shemen. V'samta levana, allow levana v'lo minchas nesachim levana. And put on it on a mincha, you put levana on it. On it excludes something v'lo minchas nesachim. And not on the mincha of nesachim. Sheach of who I could have said the same logic. The lechem apanim, which doesn't even require oil, still requires levana. Minchas nesachim shetuna shemen. Minchas nesachim is a higher status because it gets oil. And in shetuna levana, certainly it should also need levana. Tam lomar allow. So you have the aleha, the subta aleha levana, only excluding something from getting levana. Allow levana, v'lo minchas nesachim levana. Brisa goes on. Mincha l'rabos minchas shmini levana. Mincha he. So the Torah wraps up by saying it is a mincha. Mincha l'rabos minchas shmini levana. That includes the mincha of the 8th day of Miluim, when the Mishkan was inaugurated. So on the eighth day, the actual inauguration day, um, after the 7 days of Milui, after the 7 days of a particular procedure, there was a mincha on the eighth day. That mincha, the word mincha includes for Levana that it goes on the mincha of that eighth day of Milui. And it is a mincha, but not something else. That excludes, this is a mincha that gets Shem and Levana, but what doesn't get? Shtei alechem. Okay, Amar, allow shaman v'lo lechem upon shaman. Ema allow shaman v'lo minchas kohanim shaman. So we saw before that we're excluding something, and we're going to from having oil, so we're excluding lechem apanim. Why exclude lechem apanim? Maybe something else is supposed to be excluded. Maybe it's the mincha of kohanim. So mistabra minchas kohanim havola l'raboye shekain isaron. So here we're going to have a series of comparisons. Um, uh, if we're going to include or exclude something, which is more logical? We will something that's more similar is going to be included or excluded. So Minchas Kohen Havilela Rabuye, and I would have thought that Minchas Kohanim is actually more similar to the original mincha that the Torah is talking about, Shekeni Saron, because it has the following similar characteristics. How much flour do you use? An isaron. Kli, you have to do it in a kli sharis, a vessel. Chutz, it's the it's in the outside mizbeach is where you burn it. Whereas the lechem apanim is, of course, on the inside, on the table. Vitsura, and it's um, so tsura means form, like the shape of it. But really, what it's talking about is if it's left overnight, um, if it's left overnight without going on where it's supposed to go, um, then it is disqualified as opposed to the lechem apanim, which is supposed to stay there for a week. Hagasha, also the minchas kohanim is brought close to the mizbeach. It's one of the parts of the avoda. V'yishim, and it goes on the fire. So there's how many? One, two, three, four, five, six things that the standard mincha is similar to minchas kohanim and not to the lechem apanim. So you would think that maybe if the standard mincha is implying something about a different carbon, it would be the minchas kohanim because it's similar to it in six ways. The Gemara says no, adrabah, opposite. Lechem apanim have no, the lechem apanim is actually more similar in different ways to the standard mincha. Shekain sibura. Um, the both the lechem apanim and the standard mincha are communal offerings, but the minchas kohanim obviously is just for the kohanim. Chova, they're required, right? Minchas kohanim is voluntary, but both the shtei lechem and the standard mincha is a requirement. Tamia. It can be even if there's a state of tuma, um, it's it's because it's a carbon tzibur, it you still go through with it if there's no alternative, which is not the case of minchas kohanim since it's a voluntary offering. You have to wait until you're tar. Da'achil pigula, they're da'achil. They're eaten, right? The lechem apanim and the standard, but the standard, I mean the omer, are eaten by are eaten by the kohanim, whereas the minchas kohanim is not. It's burnt. Pigula, the pigul applies to the omer and the lechem apanim, but not to the minchas kohanim. Um, and b'shabta, and they're done on Shabbos, which is not the case for Minchas Kohanim. Um, so so now we're back to so it makes sense to um, to exclude as we said, to exclude or to compare and apply the same rules to the regular mincha, the Omer mincha, and the lechem apanim. So, but the Gemara says no, mistabra nefesh. It makes sense that you should include the minchas kohanim because they both have the word nefesh. Nefesh kisakriv mincha Hashem. Um, so solas karbano. If a person nefesh brings a mincha, then we have all those rules, um, and um, and the minchas kohanim is also nefesh. They're also people, as opposed to the tzibur, which you wouldn't call nefesh, a person. Okay. Amar allow lavana v'lo minchas nesachim lavana. We're going to do the same kind of thing here. We said in the Mishnah, lavana gets lavana is put on the on the Omer, but not so it gets Levana, but what it doesn't get Levana at Minchas Nesachim. Minchas Kohanim Levana. Why don't you exclude instead of excluding Minchas Nesachim, exclude Minchas Kohanim? So Mistaber Minchas Kohanim have a Leila Rabuya. It makes more sense to exclude Minchas Kohanim. Shekain Isaron Balul Belag. It's they both use Nisaron, a flour, that measure. They both get mixed with oil and yeah, that's one thing. Bolable mixed with a log of oil, which is not the case with the Minchas Nesachim. They have different measures of oil with the Minchas Nesachim, as you remember from the Torah reading or from Musaf. It depends what animal it is, one log or two logs of oil, mugash, and they're both brought to the Mizbeach, biglal. They're both independent. They're biglal atzman, like biglal. They both come for their own sake. They don't come with something else. Whereas the Minchas Nesachim is an add-on to another carbon, and biglal atzem. That's the same thing. They're both. They're brought for themselves or independently. So Gemara says, Minchas Nesachim have a little bit. Wait, I can find more similarities between the Omer and the Minchas Nesachim. Shekain, what are they? Tzibura, they're both public communal offerings. Chova, they're both mandatory, which is not the case for Minchas Nesachim. V'itame, and they can become they can be done betuma and b'shapsa and on Shabbos. So where it's just mistaber nefesh. Again, we're going to use the same answer that since the Minchas Kohanim applies to you should include you should compare it because it says nefesh, all anybody's mincha, and the kohanim are people too. Now, the next thing we said was mincha l'rabas minchas shmini l'levana. Mincha we said the mincha that includes that like why does it about the hour? Why does it say mincha he? That is a mincha. That's superfluous. So mincha is coming to include the mincha of the eighth day of Miluim. Ve'ema lahosi. What? How do you know it comes to include it? Maybe like only this is a mincha and not something else, like not the eighth day of Miluim mincha. Why don't you say it that way? So Gemara says, "Haimai, really? Yeah, might be Shlomo l'Rabos Shapir." So. Oh yeah, so it makes sense to say it's inclusive. Eliyamas Lahosi, but you want to make it exclusive. Lamali Shami Daros Le'alfinan. You would say that you can't you wouldn't ordinarily say that this one-time thing, the eighth day of Miluim, which was a one-time event, you wouldn't say that treat it the same as a regular ongoing Ladoros and Korban that the rules apply forever for the future. So, like, why would you even have to exclude it? You would exclude it logically. So therefore, we're going to use the word mincha must be to as inclusive. Okay. In other words, really, I would have thought, don't treat the miluim, the eighth day miluim mincha like any other mincha because it's a one-time thing. So there's no reason to apply the rules of a permanent thing. So that's why the Torah says mincha, and that's why we're saying no. In fact, we do say that we take the characteristic of the Omer and apply it to this one-time eighth day miluim. Then the Brisa says, "He lahotzi shtei alechem mincha." It is a mincha, but something else is not. It does not get the rule of this mincha. Lahotzi shtei alechem. It does not get this rule. The shtei alechem shlo yitan lo shem lo levana. It doesn't get oil nor levana. Ve'emo lahotzi minchas kohanim. Maybe it's excluding not the shtei alechem but minchas kohanim. So again, mistabra minchas kohanim havleil revuye. Minchas kohanim has many similar characteristics to. Um, um, to be included, to be similar to the Omer Sheken Yisaron. They both have an Yisaron measure. Kli, they're both in a Kli Sharis in a vessel. Matzah, they're both not chametz, whereas the Shtei Lechem is chametz. V'etzem, and it's independent. Hagasha, and it's brought close to the mizbeach. V'ishim, it goes on the fire. So Gemara says, Adarabba, no, I would say Shtei Lechem have a leil. Actually, the Shtei Lechem is more similar to the Yomer in more ways. Shekain Sibur, it's common law. In Chova, it's required. Tamia, you do it even betuma. Da'achal, it gets eaten. Pigula, there's Pigula applies to it. B'Shabbos, so you do it on Shabbos. Matir, here's a new idea that both both the Shtei Lechem and the Omer one of their functions is to allow you to eat the new produce, right? In the case of the Omer, you eat the new barley crop. In the case of Shtei Lechem, you can then eat from the new wheat crop. So they're similar. Tzanufa, and they both get waived. We'll discuss a lot more about that. Ba'aretz, and they only apply to things that come from the produce of Eretz Yisrael. Whereas like the wheat has to be local, has to be domestic, but which doesn't apply to the Minchas Kohanim. And Bizman, and also it's at a fixed time, which is not the case for Minchas Kohanim. The Omer is on Pesach and the Shtei Lechem is on Shavuos. And Chadash, and they have to come from the new crop, right? Which is not the case for Minchas Kohen. And that's more similar. So you should say that you should say that Shtei Lechem is more similar to the Omer. So why don't you apply the Omer characteristics to the Shtei Lechem? Why are you saying to the Minchas Kohanim? The answer is Mistabra Nefesh, again because it uses the word Nefesh, meaning anyone who and that includes the mincha. That seems to refer more to minchas kohanim, which is comes from the individual kohanim. Okay, next Mishnah. B'chayv al shemen bifnei atzmo. So if you put apparently it's talking about a minchas sota, which does not get oil or levana. But if you do those things, each of those is a separate prohibition. But if you put oil on the minchasota, then it's invalidated. If you put levana on the minchasota, which is a dry substance, you can pluck it off and you're okay. You can fix it, right, by removing the levana. Nasan shemen al shiara. Now that applies to the komets, right? To the part that goes on the fire, on the mizbeach. But what about on the leftovers? If you put oil on the leftovers, eno over below sase, that's not a problem, not a prohibition. Nasan kli al gabe kli, or if you put You take your bowl of oil and you put the whole bowl instead of, or what you ordinarily would do is pour the oil into the from the bowl into the flour. But if you just place the bowl of oil on top of the flour, that's not a problem. Lopsala. That doesn't count as adding oil to the flour. Okay, Tana Rabbanan. Lo yosim ula shemen v'imsam pasal. Don't put oil on it on the minchas sota, and if you did, then it becomes invalidated. Yachol lo yitin le'levona v'imnasam pasal. Maybe the same applies to levona. Talmud lomar ki chatas. It is a chatas. Um, so um, so that would if you put if you take this mincha, which is supposed to be for sota, and then you add levona to it, it could still work as a chatas. Um, so by saying that don't put levona on it because it is a don't put oil on it because it is a chatas. In other words, the mincha sota is also a form of a chatas. So if you put levona on it, as you would do for any other chatas, that's okay. That's not a problem. Yachalaf b'shaman. Maybe that applies also to oil. Talmud he chatas he. This is a chatas, but something else, which is the minchas sota, is not a chatas. So putting oil on it wouldn't work. So like why how do you choose? Like you're going to say one of these things, Shemin and Lavona in a Minchas Sota, one of them makes it possible and the other does not. How do you choose? Posel ni b'shemen. Why would I choose the oil to make it possible? Sheyafshar l'lakta, because you can't remove it. You pour oil on something, it's spilt milk, right? You might say it's no, you can't fix it. Whereas Lavona, machshir ni b'Lavona sheyafshar l'lakta. The Lavona is dry, you could pick it off and repair it. Um, Rabbi Baruch Huna Rabbi Yochanan. Nasal levana shechuka. What if it's very fine levona, right? So then you can't pick the fine ground levana. It's too small. No, mishum defshar l'lakta v'lo afshar l'lakta. So does that mean it's no longer you can't say anymore that you could remove it because you can't. Mishum d'lo mibala. Maybe what it's saying by saying you could pick it off means it's not really integrated with the flour, right? It's separate from the flour. Hanami lo mibala. And so the frankincense, even if you put it in, it's not like absorbed into the flour. So maybe it's still okay. Um, so which one is it? So Tashma, Ulavana Yokatana. So our Mishnah said that you have to actually pick it off, right? Um, so doesn't that seems to indicate that if it's too fine to pick off, it doesn't work, like it's no longer kosher, it's no longer valid. So Gemara says, no, maybe not. Dilma chada v'yod kamar. Maybe it's like there's two things. Chada d'lo bala. There's two reasons why putting Lavona on the Minchas Sota is not a problem. First of all, it doesn't get absorbed. The Yokatan, and also you could remove it. Tashma. So it's not inconclusive. Like what's the real reason? So Tashma, Machshir Nibel Lavona Shefshar Lokta. So the phrasing of the brisa was, I'm going to say Lavona is okay because you could pick it off. Hachanami. So doesn't that indicate that it's the fact that it's big enough, coarse enough pieces to pick off? That's what makes it okay. But if it's too fine to pick off, then it's the inability to pick it off that is the problem. So Gemara says, no, Hachanami Chadav Yad Kamar. You could say it's both. Both are factors. My Havila. So what do we decide? Amar of Nachmar Yitzchak. Tanya, we have a brisa. Minchas chote minchas knos nosen levana. The mincha of a sinner and the mincha of a sota that you put levana on it. Malakin is levana kshera. What you do is you take off the levana and it makes it kosher. V'imad shlolike, and here the brisa says outright, imad shlolike levana sachisha v'aleh. And if before you picked off the levana, you made it pigul, like you had a pigul thought about it. Either outside of its time or place. So that it invalidates it, but there's no kares, because when the Kohen had the pigul thought, it had it had the Lavona on it. Okay, implying that. Yeah, yeah, it was saying outright, "V'im mishalika levanasa b'chashiv le'achuslim kama apostle." But if after you remove the levana, that's when you have the pickle thought, then it's possible. Vein bokaris, still, um, it's still possible without kares. Um, so that's for chutz limkoma. But chutz lizmano, but if the thought was outside the time, pigo v'chayavin kares. That does get kares. So that means that um, that while it has the lavona on it, it's not doesn't have carbon status because until you pick off the lavona and restore it to its proper status, um, it's not a carbon. So you can't, if something's not a valid carbon, you can't make it pigul, right? But this Brisa says specifically that once you remove the um, once you remove the levana, then it can become pigul again. Then it's a good carbon. So it's not the fact that it doesn't get absorbed, right? Because that doesn't change whether you pick it off or not. It's the fact that you have to actually remove it. That's the factor that is important. Um, now the Gemara has a question on this whole idea. But to have a pach. Um, um, Why don't you say that this is like a mincha in which you poured oil from on it from a pitcher and not from a klisharis? Um, so amai pasla b'machshava dachoihu. Why is it subject to pigul? It's already, by having the lavona there, it's like no longer a carbon. Um, So Rabbi answers chatas kayirachmana. Still, because the Torah says it's a chatas, even leitin levana chatas he. So by juxtaposing the chatas he with leitin levana, so it implies even if you do put on levana, it's still called a chatas. It's still valid. But Rava Amar Hamane Chanan Mitzri Hu Deleis La Dechuyin. Rava says no, that's not the reason. The reason is that this brisa was taught by Hanan Hamitzri, um, uh, whose opinion was that a carbon that was uh, temporarily possible is still considered a carbon. Um, so that's why that's why Pigel would still apply. Titania, Chanan Mitzri Amar, what's the source? Chanan Mitzri says, Afilu dam bakos, maybe chavero shalo b'hagrala umezaviglo. Um, Talking about the Seir Lazazel on Yom Kippur, the goat that was sent to the wilderness. Even if so, there were two goats. One went on the mizbeach, one that was sent out to the wilderness, and they come as a pair. So um, if the um, if you lose if let's say you've done the avoda already with the seir lashem, with the one that gets sacrificed, right, and you have the blood and you've done the shechita, you have the blood, then the other one gets lost, the one that goes out to the wilderness, it escapes before you can do the ritual. So you don't have to disqualify the first one, the one that has already been through the avoda. Maybe Chavero Shaloba Hagrala Mazaviglo, you bring another one, right? Bring another Sir Lazazel and say, okay, this is now the pair. Um, so so that indicates that this one was temporarily no good until you got, like, the one that was slaughtered already becomes temporarily invalid because it doesn't have a mate. Then you go get a mate for it, and then it becomes valid again. So same principle applies here. Rashi Amar, Kol Shabiyado Lo Havadachui. No, you don't have to go with Chanan HaMitzri. You can say that the case of the Lavona, uh, since it's It's like it's up to you. Like you, if the goat got lost, that's like you can't find it. It's not in your power necessarily to find it. Um, if but the lavana, it's something that you have to do, right? You have to remove the lavana. So that's not called dachui. That's not called, that's not disqualified, and it's only temporarily disqualified. It can come back. Um, even so, you don't even have to go with Chanan HaMitzri. You could say that the case of Lavana is something that's fixable by you, and so you should fix it. And doesn't disqualify it. Amar Ravana, Kavasi Ravashi Mistabra. I like Ravashi's answer. Deman Shamaslay de Islay Dechuyin. Who is it that says in the first place that there's such a thing as the carbon being disqualified? Rabbi Yehuda, it's not, because Rabbi Yehuda said in the Mishnah. V'yodam Rabbi Yehuda, Nishbach Adam Yamus Hamishtaleach. If you lose the blood, um, of the one that was slaughtered, right? So you can't sacrifice, you can't continue the ritual anymore. Then what happens to the Seir Mishaleach, the wilderness goat? You can't do the ritual with it anymore. Then it just um, it should you just leave it to die. You can't use it for anything. You can't use it for the ritual, and you can't use it for anything else. Mesa mishteleach. What if the wilderness goat dies? Yishafech adam. Then the blood of the other one is no good anymore either. Um, so we see that Rabbi Yehuda does have this idea of dachui, that once it's been disqualified, it's permanently disqualified. But that's about the goat, where you can't do anything about it. V'ilahecha de biyado, Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer. But in a case of where you can fix it, it is up to you to fix it. There, Rabbi Yehuda says, Kos hayim amali midam hataravos. So this has to do with the carbon pesach. Um, um, so after all the carbon pesach were done, so there was a lot of blood around. So you mop up some of the blood, and this is like mixed blood from all the carbonos, and put it in a kli, v'zarkos rikachas k'neged hayesod, and do a application to the mizbeach. Um, and what was the purpose of this? The purpose of this is uh, in case somebody had spilled the blood of their Pesach before they could bring it to the Mizbeach. So this way, you kind of mix all the bloods, as it were, and do a zrika, so that everybody's Pesach will be okay. So there is a case where the Pesach is now valid again because you were able to fix the problem. Okay. Amar Yisrael Bar Yosef from Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yitzchak said, "Nasan mashahu shemen al gabi kazayis mincha." If you put any amount of oil on a kazayis of flour of a mincha, pasal. Any amount of oil, just a small, very small amount of oil, but it has to be a kazayis at least of flour. My tama, why? Lo yasim sima koldehu. When the Torah says lo yasim olei shemen, don't put oil on it. So lo yasim implies any kind of placing. It doesn't have to be a shiur. Oleha, on it, the it implies adika shiur. It has to be a significant amount. So insignificant amount of oil, but it has to is a disqualifier, but it has to be on a significant amount of flour. Rabbi Yisrael also said, "Nasan kazayis levona gabi mashu mincha pasal." If you put a kazayis of levona, full measure of levona on a minimal amount of flour, pasal. That's still pasal. My tama lo yiten ksiv adika nesina aleha. So it's lo yiten aleha. Levona. Don't put even means even like the smallest amount of levona. Aleha, but on it, on it, have a ribuy acharibuy, vein ribuy acharibuy elamai. It's include two consecutive inclusive phrases, which we understand as a restrictive phrase. So putting any amount of levana is included, but when it comes to how much flour you're putting it on, the second clause, then that has to be sorry. I'm sorry. it has to be a full amount of levana, but it could be on a minimal amount of flour. Some say that this is what he said by Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan asked, he asked it as a question. What if you put a little bit of oil on a full measure of flour? Does that matter? Teku. We don't know. Nasan Shemin al Shiareha. Okay, one second. So in this case, in this version, Rabbi Yitzchak was unclear. He didn't know the answer. Okay, next item. Nasan Shemin al Shiareha. If you put oil on the leftover of the mincha, so you've already taken the komets, put it on the fire, or you've taken it away to put on the fire, and now you put oil on the rest of the flour that goes to the kohanim. Taner Rabbanan. Lo yasim alel shemen v'lo yitain. Yachol b'shnei kohanim. So we're juxtaposing two phrases. Lo yitain lo yasim alel shemen. Don't put oil on it. V'lo yitain, and don't put, right, which really belongs to the Levana clause. So Yachol b'shnei kohanim. Maybe you might think we're talking about two different Kohanim do these two different things. One puts on Shemen and one puts on Levana. We're talking. It doesn't matter who is doing the. Um, it doesn't matter who's doing it. It matters what happens to the mincha. So it could be multiple people doing the same thing, but um, but um, but what counts is if it happened to the mincha. So it doesn't matter how many people do it. Yachol yitin kli al gabi kli v'nosan pasal. Maybe as opposed to our Mishnah, maybe you would think that putting a vessel of oil, not pouring it in, but putting the cup into the flour, like on top of the flour, maybe that makes a puzzle. No, the oil has to go actually into the flour itself. And we will stop here for today and pick it up tomorrow at the Mishnah. Have a good day, everybody.